In 1939, Indian philosopher Sri Aurobindo published The Life Divine. Early in the text, specifically in Chapter 2, The Two Negations, the Materialist Denial, he presents a rigorous epistemological challenge to the modern scientific worldview. That worldview is anchored in materialistic agnosticism. It is the strict academic consensus that reality is defined exclusively by physical, measurable sensory data, and that anything outside that data set cannot be known. The Life Divine operates here not as a mystic or spiritual text, but as a formal philosophical treatise. It approaches the materialist consensus on its own intellectual terms. The core thesis of Chapter 2 is that this strict materialist framework relies on an arbitrary premise. It demands that we ignore a massive observable dataset of human experience simply because it does not fit the established tools of measurement. By refusing to study the supraphysical, the operations of mind and consciousness in themselves, materialism erects a dogmatic boundary. It artificially truncates our understanding of reality to protect its own methodology. By deciding in advance what constitutes valid data, the materialist framework pronounces its own sentence of insufficiency before the investigation even begins. This square represents the materialist box, the rigid boundary of the observable universe, strictly limited to what current scientific instruments can measure. But human experience generates anomalous data points. Advanced states of consciousness, profound intuition, and superphysical phenomena continually manifest outside these accepted parameters. To maintain the integrity of the box, the materialist framework commits a critical logical error. It actively ignores or explains away this vast field of contradictory evidence. Noble human faculties are dismissed. They are reduced entirely to subordinate activities of material forces, stripped of any independent reality. The materialist denial is therefore not an objective scientific conclusion. It is an active refusal to rigorously investigate realities that escape the rigid hold of a limiting dogmatism. Aurobindo tracks this materialist logic to its inevitable endpoint. If matter is the only reality, then the life of the individual and the race as a whole is ultimately insignificant and unreal. This leaves the individual with two options. The first is a feverish effort to snatch whatever physical enjoyment is possible from a transient temporary existence. The second option is the dispassionate, objectless service of humanity, a race that, under strict materialism, is nothing more than a collective fiction generated by nervous mentality. Here we find the ultimate sentence of insufficiency. Materialism reduces all human aspiration, ethics, and thought to a regular nervous spasm of matter. Curiously, materialism arrives at the same dead end as extreme spiritual monism. Both conclude that the world is a maya, a reality that is deeply compelling in the moment, but ultimately phenomenal, mechanical, and transitory. To escape this logical dead end, we require a larger statement and an ever-developing inquiry that accounts for the full spectrum of existence. The materialist framework fails because it cannot assign meaningful value to human existence without contradicting its own deterministic laws. The root of this failure is a specific error in logic, the prejudgment that mind and supermind are merely subordinate terms of matter. This flowchart illustrates the orthodox hierarchy. Matter sits at the dominant base, with consciousness treated as a fragile, dependent variable generated by physical biology. Aurobindo proposes the exact inverse. The data suggests there are powers in man which determine the material organs, rather than being determined by them. In this view, the physical senses are an outer shell of our true and complete existence. They are the instruments of perception, not the creators of it. The moment we recognize realities beyond the range of those physical senses, the premise of materialistic agnosticism disappears. Mind is not a byproduct of the brain. Instead, the brain is a necessary material convenience for a pre-existing mind to interact with the physical world. When we invert the model, a new hierarchy emerges. A vast plane of mind now oversees and shapes the physical organism. Mind here is not a separate floating entity. It operates as a subordinate action of infinite knowledge, used to define forms and delimit boundaries within the physical universe. Between mind and matter lies life. Life acts as the intermediary energy, the specific dynamism required for mind to act upon physical substance. We cannot truly understand life if we only look at its biological mechanics. We only know life when we become aware of the conscious force working within that external instrumentation. By centering consciousness as the primary variable, the individual establishes a foundation for a more direct and effective use of human faculties. Currently, human thought wanders in circles. We are caught in a chaotic system of conflicting forces because we lack a true center to harmonize them. Attaining this center requires our thought to move like the Brahman of the Upanishads, fixed and stable, even while engaging in the complex play of a worldwide coursing. This emblem from Sri Aurobindo's work maps that exact integration. The true center is achieved by synthesizing the descent of spirit with the essence of matter. When this integration occurs, life no longer wanders objectlessly. It serves its aim with a serene, settled joy, backed by a rhythmically discursive energy. This true center is not an ascetic escape from reality. It is the stable, required foundation for the mind to interact with physical energy without causing violent disorder. The arbitrary premise of materialistic agnosticism has vanished. In its place, we have a larger statement and an ever-developing inquiry. The superphysical is no longer a mystic abstraction. It is a knowable domain with its own precise laws and forces, ready to be studied from the right starting point. This creates a direct bridge. It provides the means for mind to consciously seize on physical energy and speed it accurately upon its errand. Aurobindo presents this expanded framework as the prerequisite for a future where the mind is no longer a prisoner of its own instruments. Chapter 2 of The Life Divine stands as a demand for a complete, courageous investigation of existence, one that includes the rigorous study of both matter and the spirit. The deconstruction of the materialist denial removes the primary intellectual obstacle to further growth. It shifts the study of existence from a closed loop of material reactions to an open inquiry into the consciousness that organizes them.